Welcome to the day after Saturday. I'm your host, Agent J. Happy Halloween, folks. I am here with someone I actually have been considering a mentor for the last several months, someone I'm very appreciative of, a Haverford alum, the co-founder and COO of Hello 82, which is a music and media distribution company that has done amazing things in the Korean pop industry in translation to the United States market. Mr. Sang Cho, pleasure to have you, man. Thank you so much for joining.
No, thank you for having me, and thank you for the kind, generous
Oh,
assessment.
no
Calling me
sweat.
a mentor, I probably do not deserve, but I'm happy to be here.
Dude, stop. No sweat, man. No sweat. It's been a pleasure to connect with you in Soho and LA, and I'm looking forward to so much in the future. Now, as my co-host Krish usually says, it's the best place to start is the beginning. And I'd like to ask you, what from your time at Haverford, whether in the classrooms, campus culture, or community values, has stayed with you in the way you lead Hello 82?
Um, that's an excellent question. So I'm a graduate. It's in 1996. I was an East Asian Studies major. I believe since then the major has changed its name to something different, a little bit more.
I think it is East Asian culture studies still. I'm actually
Yeah,
pretty sure. Good job.
but to this day. I think what I took away from still really use it in everyday work life and just in life in general is the sense of community and service. That's more of I guess, the habit for community and culture stuff. When I say service, I don't mean some lofty, morally level of I want to do good for the world, which is also part of it. But for example, our company we are a K-pop focused music label, now as a promoter. Really, everything that we do is around serving K-pop fans outside of Korea. I mean, K-pop obviously comes from Korea, but our main customer base and our main market is the US, and now we're looking to expand into Europe, Latin America. And the reason why I say that is, the fandom has been around for since early to mid 2000s, really kind of blowing up with with YouTube phenomenon. But going back to the Haverford connection, that we always knew there are these rabid fans, very passionate fans, fans that are so appreciative of the creativity and the content and the artist engagement that comes from K-pop industry, yet they were not given the opportunity to consume, interact, engage with the product that they love so much. So I would equate it to if you're or you're a soccer fan in the 90s and you love the EPL, um, English Premier League, there's really not a lot of way for you to consume that stuff, right?
Yeah.
So, but now there's a way. It's sort of a mainstream part of the sports media consumption in the United States, still growing. So I would equate it to something like that. That there's been a huge fan base here that always wanted to engage with it, and then the company, the way we approach it is we start with the consumers or the fans first. We're not doing this business in service of the K-pop industry or the artists. We're doing this and we believe we'll make money from doing the job in service of the fans first and then going backwards to the industry and getting them to adapt to what the fans. I think that comes from the Haverford education or culture into the mindset of who are we here to serve? Like what part of what community are we part of rather than something different. So that's more of the culture thing. And I think the other very specific example is in terms of actual education, so academics of it. I'm a product of a Philadelphia public education system. So from elementary school all the way through high school, I went to public schools there. I I went to a what we think are what is one of the best public high schools in the country, called Central High School in Philadelphia. But compared to my peers who came from other parts of country, in a better sort of resource school districts, and specifically my writing was just terrible. And you know how much you have to
Hmm.
write, and how much you have to be articulate to be able to be successful at Haverford. And I still
Yeah.
remember, so I took freshman writing, I think it was called. Professor, the teacher recommended that I essentially take a remedial writing class in the first semester. So I did, with a professor who unfortunately had passed away, but Martha Wintner, who was the greatest teacher, one of the best teachers I've ever had. I specifically remember one writing sort of session where she made me read Dr. Martin Luther King's letter from Birmingham jail. And
Hmm.
there's a specific passage, which is, time is always ripe to do right. And she broke down that sentence for me. That that my problem, or and a lot of college student problem, is you tend to overwrite, you tend to over describe, you tend to over sort of,
There's a lot of fluff.
yeah. And she said, look at that sentence. And that is a beautiful, simple, but elegant, and drives home the point. And to this day, I no lie, every time I write an email or some sort of a memo or putting together a presentation, I always go back to that when I have a writer's block. Let's go back to, time is always right to do right. And that sort of still guides me to this day in terms of, what's the one of the most important skills in professional life is being able to communicate, and that
For
it
sure.
kind of, it's me. So, long-winded way of explaining, there's a macro thing that really kind of guides my life every day, and then there was a specific micro lesson from the academics. But this just to tell you, it still is a big part of, I think, the way I try to live my life and do my work, and 30
Yes.
years later.
Yeah, certainly Haverford provides a lot of opportunities with the affinity group space, and I think that helps you kind of filter out opportunities that would be of interest to certain groups, and that can help you kind of streamline, not research, of course, you're not even thinking about that as an undergrad, but you kind of get an instinctual vibe for, working with people and what their interest could be, setting up events. And that's been helpful in my career too. So I appreciate that. Was there a specific moment or gap you saw in the US music entertainment market that pushed you to launch Hello 82 in some capacity? Or was it, I mean, again, what kind of drove you after that point to launch Hello 82 with your co-founder?
Right. So, the risk of telling another long story, I think it kind of I have kind of have to go back to an earlier point in my career. So after Haverford, it was started working in Philadelphia for a large financial services firm, and for some fortune, I ended up going to Korea to live and work there. What ended up being a decade long stint in Korea. Was not in the entertainment industry, but somehow was able to work for a company called CJ Entertainment and Media. Most people, I mean, it's a huge conglomerate of cable television networks, movie studio, music business, internet-based digital content, and all of that. Most people in America would know the company as the studio behind the movie Parasite that won the Academy Awards.
Yeah.
So I started working for them in a different division, but fast forward about 5 years into my um, career with CJ in Seoul, Korea, the company saw an opportunity in the United States, in specifically for K-pop music. Now, this is going back to year 2010. So, uh, I really wasn't very well versed in K-pop, other than the fact that K-pop is essentially Korean pop music.
Yeah.
I'm a Korean first generation immigrant, so I grew up listening to K-pop all my life as well. So I got fortunate enough to from Seoul to Los Angeles in the year 2010 to launch the K-pop business for CJ. Mm. And then what happened was in 2012. Now I'm guessing, you guys are a little too young to even remember this, but there was a phenomenon called Gangnam Style. This named Psy, still, if not the biggest, one of the biggest YouTube videos ever.
Yeah, I think it's definitely got to be top 10 still for sure.
Mm. And then what that kind of showed us at the company, but also the industry, is people recognize the fact there was this global phenomenon, music that is happening and sort of emanating from Korea, but at the same time, YouTube, it was still early days of YouTube, and YouTube was such a force in global media and exposure and digital content landscape. I think people started to recognize that. So we started looking into YouTube for a lot of data, trends, really beginning to understand there was a already a significant following of K-pop in America. And it wasn't about Korean American diaspora or even Asian American. It was really ethnically um, just kind of diverse or fairly widespread. The only sort of demographic that it was defined by was young women. Women, from late teens to mid 20s was already the core going back to 2010. So we started the business by trying to launch this music television network called Mnet. Didn't really work because cable television is a whole different story. And then in 2012, um, we launched an event called KCON, which, in 2012, it was a 1 day event that was attended by about 7,000 people.
Mm.
It was a complete sort of startup operation run by, I think at the time, me, our head of marketing, and four other people.
The head of
Did not
marketing at Hello
realize.
82.
No, this is again from
Oh,
with my
from
previous employer,
gotcha.
CJ.
CJ, this is from
Um,
CJ. Gotcha.
yeah, we were thinking we'd sell maybe 1,000, 2,000 tickets, and about we sold about 5,000 tickets, and then 7,000 people showed up.
Wow.
That event in 2020, I believe, is now a 3-day event at the LA Convention Center, 3 nights of a huge scale concert at now Crypto.com Arena where the Lakers play.
Wow.
Draws about close to 200,000 people over the weekend. So that's the size and scale of K-pop. That's 12, 13 years fast forward. But the point is, it didn't go from 7,000 people to 200,000 people in 13 years. We don't believe. It was already probably, if we had the wherewithal to put together the event that scale, it would have drawn 50, 60, 70, maybe 100,000 people, even back then.
Wow.
But people just didn't recognize, people meaning K-pop industry in Korea or the mainstream media here just didn't recognize what this was,
Yeah.
which is same thing as just, these entertainment industries run by, unfortunately, still, boomers. Consumers are young kids who always find newer, fresher ways to find and connect with content.
Hmm.
So in between from then, 2012, at this Cape Cod event to now, at the previous employer, we're trying to figure out how to better do K-pop business. Um, Couldn't quite figure out beyond this event that grew into what it is now. So in 2018, one of my former colleagues had already left the company, decided to start his own K-pop venture that focused just in starting with America and then the global audience. So my partner Jay, he's the founder. I'm actually kind of tagging along with this business, but he founded the company in 2018, and I joined essentially day one. And 7 years later, we are now in
Players in the
in,
game,
in
man. Y'all are major
yeah.
players.
Yes, I would say we are one of probably
I'll
two
say it
major
for
players in
you.
the game.
I'll say it for you so you can remain humble. I respect that. I mean, I think
Thank you.
going back to the early days of Hello 82, like you said, with kind of starting in 2018 and you being there from day one, you know what, what was the, I should say, most formidable barrier in convincing both the Korean industry
Mhm.
partners and the US investors that this could actually scale to the way that you guys have made it scale?
It's the same challenge. I think that literally is the challenge. Well, now in 2025, the fact that this market for K-pop is no longer secondary. Up until I would say even 3, 4 years ago, people were just beginning to realize the K-pop market traditionally, obviously the biggest market was in Korea, but really the bigger markets were all in Asia. So Japan has been since late 90s a huge K-pop export market.
Yeah,
And China was not so much locked in. I'm gonna have to be careful saying, but essentially was not that serious about their censorship against Korean and other foreign content. China was a huge market.
yeah,
So US, even though in terms of just the market size, the economy, the entertainment industry, sophistication, all these sort of indicators told the industry in Korea that it would be and it is a huge market. They just didn't have to focus on it
yeah,
until the global pandemic, until Chinese sort of government being a little bit more protective of the domestic content industry. And that goes across music, film, TV, all of that.
right.
Um, when the Korean K-pop industry kind of had to be a little bit more flexible and put their focus in other places to continue the growth of their businesses, US became obvious kind of choice to look at. But still the conversations were tough in terms of, well, is the opportunity in America real for first and foremost?
Yeah,
And if it is real, why should we work with you when there are bigger companies like CJ and all these other, even the US labels like Universal Music, who still is the largest distributor of K-pop music, and Live Nation, who is the largest concert promoter of K-pop act. So
okay.
just um, convincing people to put their faith in my partner and Jay, who were known quantities in the industry, but at the end of the day, just two guys starting off in their own garages was the toughest thing.
It's always two guys, man. It's always two, three guys who just start this crazy journey. Uh, that's incredible. Well, I think following up with the idea that the legitimacy that you guys were thinking about in terms of a US market, is there any aspects now of the audience in America that kind of has misperceptions of what maybe Korean pop is about? Or like, let me try to think of another way to like I guess what's one thing that US audiences get wrong about K-pop fan or maybe K-pop fan culture or the culture of the music in general that you wish you could correct through your work or that you're actively correcting through your work?
Right. It's nuts. Yeah, for a long time, going back to my previous job at the large Korean studio, TJ, up until probably even 2018 to 19. Well, actually, that's not true. But up until around 2017 to 18, when I decided it was time for me to go try something new, the the perception was, um, for I guess for a lack of a better phrase, mainstream, whether it's the entertainment industry and or mainstream entertainment industry or sponsors that you would try to get for a concert tour or some sort of a content deal. The perception was that this might be still either too niche or too sort of ethnically hyper focused on a certain category of market. So
Mhm.
in the advertising industry, it's what you have the main market, then you have the black market, you have Hispanic market, and then Asian market, which are very small. Now, those boundaries are becoming a little bit less defined, but
For sure.
advertising dollars down to advertising agencies have traditionally broken down that way. But now I think the biggest perception that people or we're trying to fight, not fight against, but the challenge is not so much about the about K-pop itself, what the music industry has become. So there is no there are other than Taylor Swift and maybe even similar artists like Sabrina Carpenter or Beyonce. It is extremely divided into super fandoms. K-pop now globally a top 10 music genre and category.
Hmm.
Um, But most people in America was couldn't still name you more than one K-pop act beyond BTS, or maybe not BTS and Blackpink. But for example, the artists that we work with the most on the music label side called ATs, they've now gone number one twice on Billboard 200 album chart, number two twice, and then every album that they have released since year 2022 with us, through us, about six or seven, all on Billboard 100 and then really Billboard Top 10. So the music industry is being driven by a group of super fans who really kind of support and consume everything comes out of their favorite artist, rather than what used to be just whatever the biggest sort of mainstream act that kind of goes four quadrant. So it doesn't work that way anymore, and the perception is less about K-pop specifically, but more understanding what the music industry is becoming and evolving into.
Okay. Yeah. That's deep. That is deep for sure. And I think when I think about my family, and I told you how much my mom loves K-pop and my aunt Trophy, shout out to both of them. But they are definitely, I think, and I guess in thinking about the groups, and I think it's really interesting how you mentioned again K-pop collectively, of course, like you said, is a top ten genre now, across the board. You have artists like BTS, that are, I mean, again, I don't know where BTS,
Yeah.
I mean, BTS is up there with Taylor Swift and Sabrina. And I feel like, I mean, again, there's of course subcultures and subgroups. That's like what our generation is about. Do you feel like fans are more streamlined across the genre itself? More like, again, I think pop music, you can't follow pop music generally. You have to follow certain artists who either fit under certain blends, or I think you just like the artists themselves. Do you feel like you said, do you feel like fans are able to hop over to different artists more, I guess, easily,
Right.
or they're more lenient to, I guess, follow, and that could help out, I think, your projects all the time. Yeah.
Right. So the way to see that is so within K-pop, um, it kind of does differ from market to market, but in US K-pop market, which I know best other compared to other places, is a little bit different. So in the US, K-pop fans are K-pop fans. Now they have their two, three favorite artists or act, but they generally just kind of partake in the K-pop lifestyle, K-pop culture, and that's why we do the business the way we do. Everything we do is just basically try to create experiences. Everything, the reason why we as a music label are focused or strictly focused on physical media. And when I mention artists like AT's hitting number one multiple times on Billboard 200 album chart, most of the artists now, other than again outside of Taylor Swift, who can move about million units of physical media in a week, and she
Yeah.
releases, everybody else is still streaming and digital
Mhm.
based.
Mhm.
AT, somebody like that, can come out on the release week, can sell close to anywhere between 100 to 107,000 units of CD, vinyl, or physical media.
Wow.
And physical media, and people don't buy to consume the music. I mean, they can do it, but that's not the main purpose.
Yeah.
The reason why they do it is artists themselves create beautiful products. So these CDs are,
They're
it's
aesthetically amazing.
yeah, and there's
Yeah.
a lot of stuff in there that the fans can experience, collect, share the experience with other fans. So that's part of the experience. Um,
It's
So
interactive for sure. Yeah.
right, and what K-pop fans here enjoy and consume is that experience. So it doesn't necessarily have to be just one artist. That experience, as long as other artists and provide the same level and same quality and same kind of engagement through through providing this physical product and digital and social media engagement, they'll partake in all of that. And these same fans will still also go across um, other genres as well. I think they listen to Taylor Swift, Sabrina Carpenter, depending on who you talk to, they'll listen to I wouldn't be surprised if they listen to somebody in the Latin pop space,
Right.
country music, which is really big. So they're just generally, I think, pop culture consumers. They just happen to consume and focus on this thing more than anything else. Um, My own daughter is now college sophomore, and her friends. It's amazing to me that they would regularly listen to everybody from Billy Joel and his music from 80s and 90s, 70s, 80s and 90s to whoever artists I could have named you that are dropping singles every other week
Right.
on Spotify. So I think just this generation of um, culture consumers and music fans much more open and in tune with everything, or the history of the music, as well as then focusing specifically on something that they really, really like and supporting. I think it's less than consumption; it's supporting whatever it is that they're focusing on is the answer. So yes,
Yeah.
again, long-winded answer to I think there's plenty of crossover appeal or opportunities, and it's already happening. It's just making sure that you're not forcing the crossover and making but understanding where it's happening organically and then trying to realize on those opportunities.
Well, first saying the reason I dragged you into a podcast is so I can get long-sighted answers. And
Mhm.
I mean that's the whole point, so don't even worry about it. I'm extremely blessed and I hope the viewers are really enjoying the insights you're providing about the industry. I think that's why we have such good dialogue. I mean, I know I have my own personal interest, but I also think going back to the point that you mentioned about Billy Joel, speaking of that, I feel like also the idea of physical copy, I think it's kind of translated and I guess transcended, like you said, I think the collectible aspect of it and if it can become interactive and more of an aesthetic versus if you have old CDs and old either cassettes or CDs or vinyl, whatever you want to, I think
Right.
there's now that's a more of a nostalgic factor, and especially if you're able to kind of contribute into the, I think success or feeling like you have something that's, you know, irreplaceable. I
Right.
mean, you know what I mean? I mean, I have my Thriller vinyl that I'm very passionate and proud of having. Speaking of Halloween, but it's the most, sold album ever. And
Right.
even though it's one of, I think, how many copies worldwide by now? Over, yeah,
Would venture to guess close to a
yeah,
billion at this point.
yeah, it's too many. But I mean, it's the most sold album, so that means every other person has that copy pretty much, walking down the street, but you still feel like you're a part of a special group that you do have the physical copy. And I also think it speaks more to the aspects of culture that K-pop really produces rather than it being like a US or a US market versus Korean market thing. I mean, I think it is incredible that South Korea in like 2024 sold 93 million copies across, physical
Right.
distribution music. That's
Right.
insane. But I also think it speaks more to the fan base of K-pop rather than like looking at uh, American artists like Sabrina or Taylor Swift. I don't even know how much Beyonce really sells physically, but I think it's definitely more female artists that dominate a physical space at this point because there's more. I think, like you said, interactive. I mean, of course, you're, I think, an expert in that field of selling giving physical product out for musicians. So that's awesome, man. I'll also say that I said in the beginning, I know, you guys are a music label, but I also add the media aspect of it because most of your work is interactive. I feel like Western culture is subject to splitting up music and media, quote unquote, and also quote unquote commerce in certain ways. I feel like Korea is in my eyes fused into making them one, into one ecosystem, I should say. Do you think that this fusion is the future of the entertainment industry as we know it? And is it uniquely sustainable only in the K-pop context?
No, I think maybe in the music, well, to answer your question, no, I think if you look at entertainment as a industry, it's gradually evolving into providing again all of these things as part of a fan experience. So, music industry, if you look at the history of it, obviously up until the late 90s, physical media dominated. So from vinyl to cassette tapes to CDs. And then what really almost killed it was Napster. It
Yeah.
became digital, but
Yep.
then
Yep. Yep.
it,
Yep.
and then but the music industry has rebounded back nicely. I mean, the digital streaming is still the main piece of the recorded music business
Hmm.
revenue stream, but physical is now bounced back and it's making a bit of a comeback, and especially something like a format like a vinyl is making a very strong comeback.
Right.
But from a music industrialistic, that's just the recorded music. So how do people produce and then how do people
Yeah,
sell
that
music to their customers?
that ought to be completely digital at this point for efficiency reasons. I don't think I've seen anybody who's actually physically putting back in the tape to
Right.
record.
And even our fans, I would like they're pretty confidently venture to guess nobody's actually popping in the CD into a CD player. I barely own a CD player.
Right.
But in terms of the music industry as a whole, where the artists are making money is by touring. A lot of it is merchandising.
Live events. Yeah.
So, and the way fans are supporting, again, not somebody like Taylor Swift, but a lot of other artists, the way they're making their living is putting the music out there almost sometimes for free or for no monetization whatsoever, but
Yeah,
then going on tour, performing, and then at the performance, selling merchandise like hoodies and everything from hoodies to tees to even CDs. Again, people would buy, just have it as a keepsake rather than a way to consume the music.
for
I
sure.
think that happens if you look at even sports. Obviously, sports media rights are still a huge thing. As long as even the TV networks are dying, as long as Netflix and Amazon and these guys are coming in to swoop in to buy
Yeah,
those media rights,
that's
it's
a
still
whole
going to
different
be
conversation, man. That's a long conversation of properties and how
right.
that's going to be affecting the next 15 years of
But
media.
sports,
Yeah.
similar to music, is still driven a lot by actual live events. And people still want to pay a premium to go to the actual games and consume it there. And then if
Or
you're
stream
a
it.
crazy sicko like me who follow the Philadelphia Eagles, I probably spend across the board during the football season, which is really about 20 weeks at the most, I spend about $1,000 on a YouTube TV and Sunday ticket promotion. So sorry, no free ads, but uh, but $1,000. I Every year I end up buying the jersey or a hoodie or whatever, and then whenever, luckily enough, I live in Los Angeles, but they've come to LA to play for the last 3 seasons.
Yeah.
A family of four going to a game at SoFi at a decent seat, that's another $1,500, $2,000 expense.
Where do you usually
So
sit?
I try to still try to get decent seats. So somewhere in the second level,
Okay.
but those tickets for a popular team like the Eagles, it's the day they open, it's already you can't get the tickets at face value and you're already buying secondary
I
market.
think I think the Dodgers tickets tonight were 2,500 something like that in Toronto at the
I'm
Met.
sure easy. I'm sure
Yeah, it
easy
was.
just to get in the door.
Yeah,
But I think that's where I bring up the music and the sports specifically because one, in the grand scheme of music entertainment industry, I think these two are the future. Honestly, there's really only two categories other than gaming. So I'm going to put gaming complete. That's a long conversation.
right.
But these two are, I think, has it's going to grow, has a great future. I think it's very exciting. Um, People that are in it are innovating, so I think it's more exciting, and there will be a lot of um, new ideas that come out of these two specific categories. Something like movies and TV. TV, unfortunately, I think it's really now down to Netflix and YouTube, and that's it. Movie business, as much as I love movies, I'm a movie fan first, but I mean, that's business that's dying a slow thousand paper
Yeah,
cuts at this point.
yeah, we'll see where that. I'm interested again to see where that goes. That's another conversation for another time in terms of how film is going to be affected. We don't even know what's going on in California right now and how that's going to be. I know they're trying to set up, I think, a tax credit system for major films, but that's not going to work. I don't know.
Yeah, it's
There's really nothing that's going to be able to stop the state tax from just ripping these studios apart and physical production in California. It's practically impossible, and there's not a solution
right.
to what they want for a common Californian. I think another cool thing that I'm interested in is, you know, you've seen in pop culture a lot of artists and I think their paths up and the ground up, and you see talent, of course, kind of survey, what, is likable about them before they blow up. And I'm again curious how you guys have decided I mean, you guys are making big financial decisions when you work with artists and you take them on tours and concerts, and it sounds like you just had a successful tour. Kudos to you. But if you have an artist, or I mean, I guess the question is, have you had an artist where you are kind of putting some chips on them and seeing where it kind of goes in terms of marketing value, and what goes into the decision making for whenever you throw all of your weight into kind of a marketing campaign
Right.
for an artist? Maybe it would
Well,
have been the Hello 82 method. Yeah.
yes, no, I think this actually it goes back to your original question about our content business as well, because even though we make our money, the business from distributing physical albums and merchandise, and now doing physical events like tours and what we call fan engagement events, artist fan sort of engagement events. We did start off the company as a digital media company. So first thing we
Yeah.
did was to set up YouTube channel. We'll come up with the brand Hello 82. Then what we decided to do for the first year and a half was, well, we really need to brand ourselves as the go-to place, a trusted friend to K-pop fans around the world. And then we can start the real business. Before that, nobody's gonna, just like the industry says, okay, Jay and Sang, you guys, we like you. We
Right.
like you for your good looks and charming personality, but beyond that, who cares? Um, Fans, the same thing. Great, you guys were at Mnet and CJ and did KCON, but who cares? So, um, so we spent probably most of our initial funding that we raised in building the YouTube channel, knowing the YouTube channels that we built and the social media, sort of the presence we built wasn't going to be the main driver of revenues.
Right.
So once we established those channels as a viable go-to-market marketing tools and promotional tools for artists, we started to then go start to search for, well, who are our artist partners? So there are three things that we look at. One is we really truly do believe the artist as a partner to us. We're not a management company, so we don't own the artist. Nobody really owns the artist, but they're not contractually bound to us other than us getting distribution rights to their physical albums
Yeah.
around the world. But when we say we wanted to find an artist. We wanted to make sure because we're a small company, we have to put all of our resources behind when we release an album and promote an artist. We wanted the artist to spend just as much time, effort, and resources behind their release into the US and their promotion into the US market. Because a lot of times their attention, because these artists are now global in nature, these K-pop artists, um, their attention just inevitably gets divided between Korea and Asia. And, if they happen to be a little bit bigger in Latin America than the US, these other markets. So we wanted the people that we work with to be able to commit back to us as much as we're putting our weight behind it, they're going to throw their weight behind it. So that's one thing. The
Right.
second thing is then going to their socials and going to their YouTube. And also when we utilize our channels to create content for them and launch it, really do research into and look at the data and go, are they either, do they have the presence or do they show potential to be popular in America, let's say? And social media and YouTube and these things are great in that the data is instantaneous and you have access to it right away, right? You don't have to, back in the day, if you're a television network, you had to wait for Nielsen to give you these numbers fast overnight.
Yeah.
YouTube, you upload a video and it's literally, you can sit there and go, how is it going? What are the
Yeah.
views? Where are they coming from? Who are watching?
You
You
got to
see that
wait
right
for the
away.
Nielsen ratings back in the day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, um, so those are two key things that we do look at. Again, not because we're sitting here going, "Oh, who are we going to work with?" It's more because we're a small company, who can we only have a few at bats that we're going to have during the year. Who are going to be our partners? Who's going to focus and put, again, the same amount of time, resource, commitment behind these at bats? So those are two big factors we look at. And the third thing is then after we do a sort of a test campaign with them, starting with using our channel to create original content and see how they're tracking in in the market that we're looking at, like the US or Europe, and then
Yeah.
doing a smaller album release or some sort of a fan event, seeing how those two things deliver results, and then from there build out a plan of what albums and how we're going to release the albums, which distribution channels work best,
Yeah.
and how do we then customize a promotional plan for them. So we do look at three things. Two of them, the data stuff is a little bit similar, but it goes through the iteration of one, kind of mutually interviewing between artists and us to see if there's a good partnership that could be had, then looking at
Yeah.
existing data and then testing the data with stuff that we create.
Okay. Well, I'm happy my instincts are going to be serving me right through my media entrepreneurial endeavors. Well, I got three more. Hopefully they're not too tricky or, hopefully they're not too lengthy of answers for you as we conclude. But maybe someone that you're working
Mm,
with all right, I'll try to go as
mm,
economically rhetorical as possible. What are what's an underrated artist or project you're working with that you think has the chance to explode in the next few years? I guess five, and then the next follow-up to that is 5 years from now, what's a moonshot idea that Hello 82 is thinking about? And to follow up with that,
mm.
if you could design a new format, which is something I've always been interested in terms of media, is kind of creating a new format or idea of content. But if you had an idea of a new format or new piece of content to design for this interactive experience for K-pop and how fans are able to experience the genre, what would that look like?
Mm. Um,
And you don't
well,
need
in
to
terms of yeah,
know.
I mean, in terms of artists, it's tough to say. I mean, we don't work with a lot of artists. I mean, we work with a lot of artists, but for example, I mean, I would just use P1 Harmony, which is the group that we did the tour with most
Yeah.
recently. So P1 Harmony, we have been releasing their albums. since again 2012 or 2022, 2023, compared to us doing their physical album release here in the US. I don't think they've ever charted on Billboard 200. Since we started with them, they've
Okay.
gone from, I think, first time just in the top 100. And their last release, the latest release, which was in late September, and I'll get into the sort of the interesting project aspect of it, ended up hitting number nine. So they finally
Wow.
got into the top 10. Um,
Well, there's your sleeper
that
right there. There you go.
yeah. And this is again a group that is probably more popular in the US than back in Korea or even in Asia. So I guess in that sense, they're the sort of the sleeper because maybe in the home of K-pop in Korea, they're not as well known or as popular. You see a huge group here. The tour that we did with them is was 8 city tour in all the arenas. The biggest venues that we played were United Center in Chicago, where the Bulls play,
Nice.
and then Intuit Dome here in LA,
Nice.
where the Clippers do. I
Yeah,
mean, that venue is beautiful. I mean,
it
Intuit
is
Dome,
beautiful. That is
everybody should go once. Now, so the P1 Harmony, for example, is what you would we would call sleeper, I guess, in this context, because yes, they've have much more popular and well known in this market to K-pop fans compared to just in Korea. In terms of interesting project, kind of skipping over the second question, is this tour and this latest album release was something that was kind of unique to the K-pop industry. So because of the industry cycle, how it works, the K-pop groups still have to, they can't completely ignore their home market, which is Korea, right? And Asia. And then the US. So what tends to happen is K-pop groups typically release 2 to 3 albums a year, which is
that's a
crazy.
lot.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy. Like
My gosh.
Sabrina, I think, or Taylor Swift, maybe once a year. I mean, these are major releases,
Dude,
but that's
Michael would put out album every 4 or 5 years,
right. Right.
So
But they do that. And that's the way they keep their fans engaged, and that's why K-pop fans love the groups because
right.
they know literally these guys and gals are releasing an album, doing a tour, back in the lab, releasing another album. Typically, so what happens is a K-pop group will release an album globally, but then by the time they're able to do the tour in America, it's at least a month to maybe half year later.
Right.
With this particular example, we worked with the artists, going back to my earlier point of we want to be partners with artists just because we wanted to do something unique, create a unique experience for P1 Harmony fans and also just K-pop fans in general. We released the album with them on September 26th. And this was a North American English language album, first for this group, P1 Harmony. And then we started the tour on the next day, 9/27. So this was literally the first time an album released that was going to be supported by a tour and vice versa. And the
Yeah.
first time the group performed the songs live in front of anyone was in the United States at the Newark Prudential Center.
Wow.
So this was a sort of a new model, and I think it really kind of helped both album release to go 10 in Billboard, but also the tour to do as well as it did in what was a challenging marketplace this year. Not challenging because K-pop was not doing well,
Yeah.
challenging because K-pop was doing so well. There was
It's very saturated.
11 tours between August and October
Right.
of the same similar size. So it was a bloodbath out there, but our guys did well. We did well, and our fans were super excited. So that's kind of to answer maybe all of your questions in one, taking a quote unquote sleeper, and that's who we tend to work with, people who teams that are more popular here or have more interest in developing this market more, recognizing that fans here just as important, just as rabid, just as productive as fans in other parts of the world, and then doing something new and interesting like this with them is where we see exciting new opportunities are. And in 5 years, we're hoping our moonshot is doing these types of things, not just in the United States, but we be doing two or three of these instead of once a year in the US, two, three times a year in Europe, two, three times in Latin America.
Yeah.
Sort of truly going global is our next plan and what we hope to achieve in the next 3 years. I think nowadays in the business cycle, 5 years, if I told you I was going to try to do something or we were trying to plan something for 5 years down the line, that person is telling you a lie. They have no idea.
No, I do. I think
Yeah,
we talked about this at
yeah,
when we were getting sandwiches. 5 years, we
yeah.
have no idea what's going to
No
happen.
idea.
Three, like 2 to 3 years,
three
we
years is
may
as long
be
as
able.
yeah,
Yeah, we may be able to know what's going to
yeah.
happen. Yeah. Well, yeah, you
At
did a
least you can
great. You
plan for
took
it.
you took the new format, you took the moonshot, and you took the sleeper all into one. And it sounds like it was a pretty successful campaign to start. And it's nice to see that duality of, having the album release and the live event aspect
Right.
kind of coincide in profitability. So kudos to you, man. Well, this concludes our time together on the podcast. I'm so thankful for you to join. And, I'm looking forward to so many more experiences in the future, man.
No, it's always a great time when I see you. I'm hoping to be, I have been traveling quite a bit. I haven't been able to go back to Philly in a while, but my family still lives there. I'm hoping to be back sometime soon and maybe even visit the campus. Definitely as scary or exciting, I don't know how to put it, but my 30th reunion is next year, so I'll definitely be back in May, but hopefully before that we can meet in person somewhere in
Yeah,
this universe.
yeah, I'm sure we're gonna figure it out. And I believe I'm going back to LA over spring break, so we'll catch up then, if
Okay.
possible, I think in March. So
And but more than anything else, thanks for having me. I really appreciate
Sang,
you
dude, thanks
giving
for
me the
coming on.
platform to share my story.
No, of course, man. It's a pleasure, and I'm really extremely grateful that I'm able to kind of spotlight Haverford alums through the platform that has been now running for over a year now, which has been
Ah,
just something that's
congratulations.
surreal.
Yeah.
Ah, thank you very much. Well, I appreciate it. All right, everybody, tune in for more coverage. Say peace to Sang, peace and love.